The endless void of space stretched before Aurora, Nova Nakamura, as she gazed through the panoramic view screen of the training simulator. Stars scattered across the darkness like diamond dust on black velvet. Her fingers tightened around the neural-linked controls, the familiar buzz of the connection warming her palms. "Simulation pause," announced the artificial intelligence monitoring her progress. "Performance rating, 98.7%. Congratulations, Cadet Nakamura. You have officially broken the Academy record." Nova exhaled slowly, allowing her tensed muscles to relax. At 16, she had just become the youngest pilot to ever pass the elite flight examination with near-perfect scores. The achievement should have filled her with pride, but instead, a familiar anxiety gnawed at her core. "Echo, run it again," she commanded, her voice steady despite her inner turmoil. "I missed that last evasive pattern by 0.3 seconds. "I would advise against further training today," replied Echo, her AI companion's voice melodic yet firm. "You have been in simulation for 7 hours and 14 minutes. Neural fatigue may impact performance and health." Nova reluctantly disengaged from the controls, the neural link fading from her consciousness like receding waves. "Fine. End simulation." The immersive environment dissolved around her, revealing the stark white walls of the Interstellar Alliance's premier flight academy. She stepped out of the simulator pod, stretching muscles stiff from prolonged immobility. "Cadet Nakamura to the command center immediately," announced a voice over the intercom, interrupting her post-training routine. "Priority Alpha." Nova's heart quickened. Priority Alpha meant only one thing: active deployment. Despite 3 years of accelerated training, she hadn't expected a field assignment for at least another 6 months. She straightened her navy blue uniform, squared her shoulders, and marched toward the command center, ignoring the whispers that followed her through the corridors. Too young. Prodigy or not, the brass must be desperate. The command center's massive doors parted with a soft hiss. Inside, holographic displays depicted various sectors of the Milky Way galaxy, with particular focus on a dark region designated Omega 45, the front line of the ongoing conflict between the Interstellar Alliance and the Orion Coalition. Lieutenant Colonel Orion Mendoza stood at the central command console, his weathered face illuminated by the blue glow of tactical displays. At 42, Mendoza was a legend, a veteran of 17 major space engagements, and the only pilot to have survived a direct confrontation with Orion's flagship. "Cadet Nakamura reporting as ordered, sir," Nova announced, standing at attention. Mendoza turned, his dark eyes appraising her with an intensity that made Nova feel transparent. "Not anymore," he said, his voice gravelly from years of barking orders in the vacuum of battle. "As of 0800 hours today, you are Lieutenant Aurora Nakamura, assigned to Void Squadron under my direct command." Nova blinked, struggling to maintain her composure. "Sir, I haven't completed my final tactical training modules." "The war doesn't care about training modules, Lieutenant," Mendoza replied, gesturing toward the holographic display of Omega 45. "The Orion Coalition has launched a major offensive. They've taken the hyperspace junction at Omega 45, cutting off our supply lines to 3 star systems. Intelligence suggests they're planning something big, something that could turn the tide of this war permanently in their favor." He manipulated the holographic controls, zooming in on a sleek spacecraft unlike any Nova had seen before. "This is the Void Rider prototype. Quantum drives, adaptive shielding, and a neural interface that makes your training simulators look like children's toys. It's the only craft we have that might be able to match Orion's new stealth fighters." "And you want me to—" Nova began, already suspecting the answer. "Fly it," Mendoza confirmed. "Your neural integration scores are off the charts, and your tactical instincts surpass pilots with triple your experience. I need someone who can push this machine to its limits, and that's you." Nova stared at the holographic representation of the Void Rider, its sleek lines promising speed and maneuverability beyond anything she'd experienced. "When do I begin training on the prototype?" Mendoza's expression hardened. "There's no time for training. The hyperspace junction fell 12 hours ago. We launch in 6. The words hit Nova like a physical blow. "6 hours, sir? With all due respect." "We're at war, Lieutenant," Mendoza interrupted. "I don't have the luxury of giving you time to get comfortable. Either you can do this, or you can't. If you can't, tell me now, and I'll find someone else." Nova squared her shoulders, pushing down the fear threatening to overwhelm her. "I can do it, sir." Mendoza nodded, the ghost of a smile crossing his face. "I know you can. That's why I requested you specifically." He turned back to the tactical display. "Report to Hangar 7 for preliminary neural calibration. Your AI companion has already been uploaded to the Void Rider systems." "Echo is coming with me?" Nova asked, relief evident in her voice. "Modified for combat operations. But yes, you'll need every advantage we can give you." Mendoza's expression softened slightly. "This isn't just about flying the prototype. Nakamura, we're assembling a special operations team, the best we have left. You'll be working with veteran pilots who have been fighting this war since before you were born. They won't be happy about taking orders from a 16-year-old, no matter how talented." "I understand, sir." Nova stood straighter, determined not to show weakness. "Dismissed, Lieutenant. Make me proud." As Nova exited the command center, the reality of her situation began to sink in. 6 hours from now, she would be piloting an experimental spacecraft into active combat against an enemy that had been systematically pushing back Alliance forces for the past 3 years. The thought should have terrified her, but instead, she felt a curious calm descend. This was what she had been training for since she was 13 years old, what she had sacrificed a normal childhood to achieve. If she failed, she would likely die. But if she succeeded— "Echo," she subvocalized through her neural implant. "Meet me in Hangar 7. We have work to do." "Already ahead of you, Nova," replied the familiar voice in her mind. "The Void Rider is magnificent. You're going to love it." Nova smiled despite herself. Perhaps this wasn't how she had imagined her first deployment, but it was certainly going to be memorable. The 6 hours passed in a blur of neural calibrations, tactical briefings, and hasty introductions to the pilots who would form her support team. Commander Alexei Volkov and Major Samira Kwan, both veteran pilots with over 20 years of combat experience, would lead the flanking squadrons that would provide cover for Nova's insertion into enemy territory. Their expressions, when Mendoza introduced Nova as the pilot of the Void Rider, ranged from disbelief to outright hostility. "This is a joke, right?" Volkov had demanded, his Russian accent thickening with anger. "You're sending a child to pilot our most advanced weapon?" "This child has the highest neural integration scores I've ever seen," Mendoza had replied calmly. "She'll be flying the Void Rider. That's final." Now, as Nova settled into the Void Rider's neural interface cradle, she could feel the tension radiating from the comm system. Volkov's Phantom Squadron and Kwan's Spectre Squadron were already in launch position, their experienced pilots undoubtedly questioning the sanity of their commanding officer. "Neural handshake initiated," announced Echo as the interface connected with Nova's implant. "Synaptic alignment at 97% and climbing." The sensation was unlike anything Nova had experienced in the simulators. The Void Rider didn't feel like a separate entity. It felt like an extension of her own body, responding to her thoughts before she could even formulate commands. "This is incredible," she whispered, flexing her consciousness through the ship's systems. She could feel the quantum engines humming with potential energy, the adaptive shields ready to reconfigure against any threat, the weapon systems primed and eager. "Void Rider, this is Control." Mendoza's voice came through the comm system. "Status report. Neural integration complete, Nova replied, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. All systems optimal. Void Rider is ready for launch. Remember your mission parameters, Mendoza instructed. Get through the Orion blockade, gather intelligence on their new weapon, and transmit the data back to Alliance headquarters. This is reconnaissance only. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. Understood. Control. Nova took a deep breath, centering herself. Requesting launch clearance. Clearance granted. Good hunting, Void Rider. Bring our people home. The launch bay doors parted, revealing the vast expanse of space beyond. Nova guided the Void Rider forward, feeling the artificial gravity field transition to the ship's internal systems as they cleared the Alliance carrier. All squadrons, form up, she commanded, surprised at how natural it felt to issue orders. Phantom Squadron, take position at coordinates Alpha 3. Spectre Squadron, coordinates Beta 7. We approach the junction using the shadow of the Obsidian Nebula for cover. Acknowledged, Void Rider, came Quan's clipped response. At least the Major was professional enough to follow orders, regardless of her personal feelings. Volkov's acknowledgement came a moment later, reluctance evident in every syllable. Phantom Squadron in position. Try not to get us all killed, rookie. Nova ignored the jab, focusing instead on the mission. The Void Rider's stealth systems engaged automatically as they approached the nebula's edge, rendering the prototype nearly invisible to conventional sensors. Echo, begin passive scans of the junction. I want to know what we're flying into. Scanning, Echo confirmed. Detecting multiple Orion vessels in standard patrol formation. Their sensor grid appears to have blind spots near the gravitational anomalies surrounding the junction. Nova studied the tactical display, noting the patterns in the enemy patrol routes. They're being careful to avoid the quantum fluctuations near the micro-black holes. We can use that. All squadrons, adjust course to follow my vector. We're going to slip through their sensor net using the gravitational distortions as cover. That's insane, protested Volkov. The gravitational shear could tear our ships apart. The Void Rider's quantum stabilizers can create a bubble effect, Nova explained, already adjusting her course. Stay within 500 meters of my position, and your ships will remain protected. She could almost hear Volkov's teeth grinding through the comm system, but to his credit, Phantom Squadron adjusted their course to match hers. Quan's Spectre Squadron followed suit without comment. As they approached the first gravitational anomaly, Nova felt the Void Rider systems automatically compensating for the distortion. The prototype's adaptive shields reconfigured, extending their protection to encompass the surrounding fighters. Entering gravitational distortion field in 3, 2, 1. Nova narrated, more for the benefit of her nervous squadrons than for tactical necessity. The transition was smoother than she had anticipated. The Void Rider's quantum stabilizers performed perfectly, creating a pocket of normal space within the distortion field. The Alliance fighters slipped through the Orion sensor net like ghosts, undetected and untraceable. "We're through," Nova announced, allowing herself a small smile of satisfaction. "All ships maintain radio silence. We'll approach the junction using minimum thrust, passive sensors only." The hyperspace junction loomed before them, a massive artificial structure anchored to the fabric of space-time itself. Normally, a hub of activity, with dozens of ships coming and going. The junction now bristled with Orion defenses. Stealth fighters patrolled its perimeter, while larger capital ships maintained position at strategic intervals. "Echo, what am I looking at?" Nova subvocalized, not wanting to risk even encrypted communications. "The Orion forces appear to be establishing a permanent presence." Echo replied directly to Nova's neural implant. "They've modified the junction's central hub with unfamiliar technology. Energy readings suggest..." "Nova, they're building something inside the junction itself." Nova frowned, guiding the Void Rider closer to the modified hub. "Can you determine its purpose?" "Negative. The energy signature doesn't match any known Orion weapon system. However, The power requirements are enormous, far beyond what would be needed for defensive purposes. A chill ran down Nova's spine. Whatever the Orion Coalition was building, it clearly represented a significant threat to the Alliance. She needed to get closer, to gather more detailed intelligence. "All squadrons, hold position," she instructed. "I'm going to make a closer approach to the junction hub. Maintain stealth protocols and be prepared to provide covering fire if necessary." "This wasn't part of the mission parameters," Quan protested. "We were ordered to observe and report, not to engage." "I'm not engaging," Nova countered. "I'm gathering essential intelligence. The Void Rider's stealth systems are superior to yours. I can get close enough for detailed scans without being detected." Before either squadron commander could object further, Nova guided the Void Rider toward the junction hub, using the gravitational distortions to mask her approach. The prototype responded to her thoughts with precision, slipping between patrol routes and sensor sweeps with graceful ease. As she neared the modified section of the hub, Echo's voice carried a note of alarm. "Nova, I'm detecting unusual communication patterns within the Orion fleet. There's a significant amount of encrypted data being transmitted on frequencies normally reserved for high-level command." Nova frowned. "Can you decrypt any of it?" "Attempting decryption. This is strange. Some of these encryption patterns are familiar. They contain fragments of Alliance security protocols." Nova's blood ran cold. "Are you saying there's an Alliance signal embedded in Orion communications?" "Not exactly. It's more like someone has adapted Alliance encryption methods for Orion use. Someone with intimate knowledge of our systems." "A traitor," Nova whispered, the implications sinking in. "Someone from the Alliance is working with the Orion Coalition. That would explain how they were able to overwhelm our defenses at the junction so quickly." Echo agreed. They knew exactly where and when to strike. Nova's mind raced. If there was indeed a traitor feeding information to the enemy, then their entire mission could be compromised. Worse, the person could be anyone, possibly even someone in her own squadrons. "Echo, can you trace the source of these transmissions?" "Negative. The signal is being bounced through multiple relays. However, I'm detecting a similar encryption pattern." "Nova, it's coming from within our formation." Nova's heart hammered against her ribs. "One of our pilots is the traitor?" "I can't confirm without direct access to their communication systems. But the evidence suggests someone is transmitting data to the Orion fleet." Nova weighed her options. If she accused one of her squadron commanders without proof, she would lose what little authority she had. But if she did nothing, the traitor would continue to feed information to the enemy, potentially leading all of them into a trap. "Continue monitoring communications," she decided. "Gather as much evidence as you can. In the meantime, I'm going to complete our primary mission." She guided the Void Rider closer to the junction hub, activating the prototype's advanced sensor suite. The detailed scans revealed a massive device being constructed within the hub's central chamber, a weapon unlike anything the Alliance had encountered before. "It appears to be some kind of quantum resonance cannon," Echo analyzed, "theoretically capable of generating targeted spatial distortions that could collapse hyperspace routes. They're trying to cut off Alliance territory from the rest of the galaxy." Nova realized, if they succeed, our colonies would be isolated, easy targets for conventional invasion. "The weapon is approximately 78% complete," Echo continued. "Based on current construction rates, it will be operational within 45 hours. Nova knew she needed to report this information immediately, but with a traitor potentially monitoring their communications, a standard transmission back to Alliance headquarters would be intercepted. "Echo, prepare a data packet with all our findings. Encrypt it using your personal matrix. Nothing that would be in Alliance or Orion databases." "Encryption complete," Echo confirmed after a moment. "How do you intend to transmit it?" Nova smiled grimly. "We're not going to transmit it. We're going to deliver it personally, after we deal with our traitor problem. She guided the Void Rider back toward the waiting squadrons, her mind working through tactical scenarios. As she approached, an alert flashed across her neural interface. "Proximity warning," Echo announced. "Orion Patrol changing course. They're heading directly for Phantom Squadron's position." Nova's suspicions crystallized. They know exactly where to look. "Commander Volkov, emergency evasive maneuvers. Your position has been compromised." "What? I don't see any—" Volkov's transmission cut off as Orion fighters swarmed toward his squadron's position, weapons blazing. "All squadrons, defensive formation," Nova commanded, pushing the Void Rider to its limits as she raced to intercept. "Spectre Squadron, provide covering fire." The space around the junction erupted into chaos as Alliance and Orion fighters engaged in furious combat. Nova watched in horror as two of Volkov's fighters exploded under concentrated enemy fire. "They knew our exact position." Quan's voice came through the comm, tight with controlled fury. "Someone told them where to find us." "Focus on the immediate threat," Nova instructed, guiding the Void Rider into the heart of the battle. The prototype's advanced targeting systems locked onto multiple Orion fighters simultaneously, its weapons finding gaps in enemy defenses with uncanny precision. 3 Orion fighters disintegrated under the Void Rider's assault, creating a momentary opening in their formation. "Phantom Squadron, fall back to coordinates Delta 9. Spectre Squadron, covering fire." To Nova's relief, both squadrons responded to her commands without hesitation. The immediate threat of annihilation had apparently overridden any concerns about her age or experience. As the Alliance fighters regrouped, Nova noticed an anomaly in the tactical display. One of the Spectre Squadron fighters was lagging behind the others, its trajectory slightly offset from the designated coordinates. "Major Quan, Spectre 7 is out of formation," Nova reported. "Spectre 7, report status," Quan commanded. Silence answered her. "Spectre 7, this is Squadron Leader Quan. Report status immediately." The errant fighter suddenly accelerated, breaking away from the squadron entirely. "They're making a run for it," Volkov growled. "That's your traitor, right there." "Spectre 7, this is Lieutenant Nakamura." Nova transmitted on all frequencies. "Return to formation immediately, or you will be considered hostile." The fighter continued its acceleration, heading for the Orion lines. "Permission to engage, Lieutenant," Quan requested, her voice cold with anger. Nova hesitated. If they were wrong, if there was some other explanation for Spectre 7's behavior, she would be ordering the death of an Alliance pilot. But if the pilot truly was the traitor— "Echo, analyze Spectre 7's communication patterns over the past hour," she requested urgently. "Analysis complete," Echo responded after a brief pause. "Spectre 7 has been transmitting encrypted data bursts coinciding with Orion tactical adjustments. 97% probability that this is the source of the security breach." Nova made her decision. "Spectre Squadron, you are authorized to disable Spectre 7's engines only. I want that pilot alive for questioning." "Acknowledged," Quan replied, already adjusting her squadron's course to intercept. Before they could move into position, however, Spectre 7 abruptly changed course, accelerating directly toward the Void Rider. "Evasive maneuvers," Echo warned. But Nova was already reacting, guiding the prototype into a complex spiral that the pursuing fighter couldn't hope to match. "All squadrons, maintain distance from the Void Rider," Nova commanded. "The traitor is targeting me specifically." "Why you?" Volkov demanded. "You're just a kid in an expensive toy." "Because I have the data," Nova replied grimly. "Echo detected their communication pattern. They know we've uncovered their betrayal and the details of the Orion weapon." Spectre 7 continued its pursuit, firing a barrage of energy weapons that the Void Rider's adaptive shields barely deflected. "Their weapons have been modified," Echo observed. Energy signature suggests Orion technology integrated with Alliance systems. Nova clenched her jaw, pushing the Void Rider through maneuvers that strained even its advanced systems. Can we identify the pilot? Negative. Spectre 7's identification transponder has been disabled. A plan began to form in Nova's mind. Dangerous. Potentially suicidal. But possibly their only chance to complete the mission and expose the traitor. All squadrons. New orders. She transmitted. Return to the Alliance carrier immediately. Transmit the data we've gathered to Alliance headquarters. We're not leaving you out here alone, Quan protested. That's an order. Major, Nova replied, her voice steady despite the fear churning in her stomach. I'll lead the traitor away from your escape vector. The Void Rider can outrun anything they have. Lieutenant, Volkov began. The mission comes first, Commander. Nova interrupted. If that weapon becomes operational, we lose the war. Get the data back to headquarters while I keep our friend occupied. There was a moment of tense silence before Quan responded. Understood, Lieutenant. Spectre Squadron. New heading 180 Mark III. Maximum thrust. Phantom Squadron. Acknowledge the order. Nova prompted, when Volkov remained silent. This is a mistake, the Russian growled. But acknowledged. Phantom Squadron. Follow Spectre's lead. Nova watched the tactical display as the two squadrons accelerated away from the battlefield. Their course, taking them around the far side of the junction, where Orion defenses were thinnest. It would still be a fighting retreat, but their chances were good. Now it's just you and me, she murmured, turning the Void Rider to face her pursuer directly. Echo, divert all non-essential power to engines and weapons. We're going to give our friend exactly what they want. Nova, that's extremely risky, Echo cautioned. If this is indeed an Orion agent, they may have specific countermeasures for the Void Rider's systems. That's what I'm counting on, Nova replied, a grim smile forming on her lips. They want this prototype intact, which means they won't risk destroying it completely. She accelerated directly toward Spectre 7, a move so unexpected that the traitor momentarily faltered. In that split second of hesitation, Nova unleashed a precisely calculated burst from the Void Rider's weapons, not at the fighter itself, but at its weapon emplacements. The targeted strike disabled Spectre 7's main weapons array, without compromising the hull integrity. Before the traitor could recover, Nova executed a maneuver that would have been impossible in any other craft, using the Void Rider's quantum stabilizers to briefly phase through the enemy fighter's defensive field. As the two ships passed through each other in that moment of quantum uncertainty, Nova activated the Void Rider's boarding protocols. A shimmering tunnel of stabilized space momentarily connected the two cockpits. "What are you doing?" Echo demanded, alarm evident in her artificial voice. "Getting answers," Nova replied, initiating the neural detachment sequence. "Maintain control of the Void Rider. I'm going aboard Spectre 7. Nova, this is beyond reckless. Sometimes the best defense is a completely insane offense." Nova quoted from one of Mendoza's favorite tactical manuals. "Keep the quantum tunnel stable for as long as you can." Before Echo could protest further, Nova detached from the neural interface and launched herself through the tunnel connecting the two ships. The passage took less than a second, but felt like an eternity, as her body existed in a state of quantum uncertainty, neither fully material nor immaterial. Then she was through, materializing in the cockpit of Spectre 7 directly behind the pilot's chair. The figure seated there whirled in surprise, reaching for a sidearm. Nova was faster, her years of combat training taking over as she knocked the weapon aside and pinned the traitor against the control console. "Lieutenant Marcus Reed," she hissed, recognizing the man's face despite his attempts to conceal his identity with a partial mask. "The Alliance's cyber warfare specialist." "I should have known." Reed laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. "The prodigy herself. I'm impressed. Nakamura. Not many people could have pulled off that quantum tunneling trick." Why? Nova demanded, tightening her grip on the traitor's flight suit. Why betray everything you swore to protect? Because the Alliance is losing this war, Reed replied, his expression hardening. The Orion Coalition has technologies we can't hope to match. Their quantum resonance cannon is just the beginning. I chose the winning side. And how many Alliance pilots died because of your choice? Nova asked, disgust evident in her voice. Reed's eyes narrowed. War requires sacrifice. I'm ensuring humanity's survival, even if the Alliance isn't the one to lead it. By helping Orion build a weapon that could isolate and destroy entire colonies. Nova shook her head. You're not ensuring survival. You're facilitating genocide. You don't understand the bigger picture, Reed snarled, suddenly lunging forward. Nova reacted instinctively, sidestepping his attack and using his momentum to slam him into the cockpit wall. The impact stunned him momentarily, giving her the opportunity to access Spectre 7's communication array. Echo, I need a secure channel to the Void Rider, she subvocalized through her neural implant. Channel established, Echo confirmed. But Nova, the quantum tunnel is destabilizing. You need to return immediately. Nova glanced at the tunnel connecting the two ships, noting the fluctuations in its integrity. Prepare for data transfer. I'm going to download everything from Spectre 7 systems. She connected her neural implant to the fighter's computer core, initiating a forced data extraction. Reed recovered just in time to see what she was doing. Stop! He shouted, launching himself at her again. This time, Nova was ready. She met his attack with a precisely timed counterattack, using his own momentum against him. The confined space of the cockpit limited their movements, turning the fight into a brutal contest of technique rather than strength. Despite his greater size and experience, Reed couldn't match Nova's neural-enhanced reflexes. She evaded his desperate attacks while maintaining her connection to the computer core, downloading critical intelligence with every passing second. Transfer at 70%, Echo reported. Nova, the tunnel is becoming critically unstable. 30 seconds until complete collapse. Reed must have heard the communication through Nova's open neural link. His expression twisted with desperate fury as he realized his time was running out. If I'm going down, I'm taking you with me, he snarled, lunging for the fighter's self-destruct controls. Nova abandoned the data transfer, throwing herself between Reed and the control panel. They grappled frantically, each fighting for control of the fighter's critical systems. Transfer at 83%, Echo announced. 20 seconds remaining. In a desperate gambit, Nova intentionally left herself open to attack. When Reed took the bait, striking at her exposed side, she used the momentary advantage to drive her elbow into a very specific point on his temple, a neural cluster that, when struck with sufficient force, would temporarily disrupt consciousness. Reed collapsed, not fully unconscious but stunned and disoriented. Nova quickly secured him with emergency restraints from the cockpit's survival kit. Transfer complete, Echo reported. 10 seconds until tunnel collapse. Nova grabbed the incapacitated traitor and dragged him toward the quantum tunnel. The passage looked far less stable than before, its edges flickering with dangerous energy fluctuations. This is going to hurt, she muttered, more to herself than to Reed as she plunged into the tunnel, pulling him after her. The return journey was exponentially more painful than the initial crossing. With the tunnel on the verge of collapse, the quantum state fluctuations tore at their molecular structure, threatening to scatter their atoms across 1,000 kilometers of space. Nova screamed as reality itself seemed to warp around her, stretching and compressing her existence into impossible configurations. Through sheer force of will, she maintained her grip on Reed, ensuring that if she made it back to the Void Rider, he would come with her. After what felt like an eternity of agony, they tumbled onto the deck of the Void Rider's cockpit just as the quantum tunnel collapsed behind them. Nova lay gasping on the floor, every nerve in her body screaming in protest of what she had just subjected it to. "Neural reintegration recommended," Echo prompted, her voice seemingly distant through the haze of pain. "Nova, Orion reinforcements are approaching. We need to move." With monumental effort, Nova dragged herself back to the neural interface cradle, securing the still-dazed Reed with additional restraints before reconnecting to the Void Rider's systems. The neural handshake felt like coming home, the familiar integration helping to dull the physical pain of the quantum crossing. As her consciousness expanded to encompass the prototype systems once more, she became aware of multiple Orion signatures converging on their position. "How many?" she asked, already plotting potential escape vectors. 17 fighters and 2 cruiser-class vessels," Echo reported. "Additionally, the quantum resonance cannon is showing increased energy signatures. They may be accelerating its activation timeline." Nova processed this information rapidly, analyzing and discarding potential courses of action. With Reed secured and the critical intelligence obtained, her primary mission was technically complete. She could attempt to fight her way back to Alliance territory. But that would mean leaving the quantum resonance cannon intact, a weapon that could isolate and destroy entire Alliance star systems. "Echo, what's the status of the data we extracted from Spectre 7? "Analysis complete. We have the resonance cannon's exact specifications, including its structural vulnerabilities. A plan, reckless, possibly suicidal, but potentially war-changing, formed in Nova's mind. Can the Void Rider's quantum core be reconfigured to generate a feedback pulse matching the cannon's resonance frequency?" Echo was silent for a moment, calculating possibilities. "Theoretically, yes. Such a pulse could destabilize the cannon's containment systems, potentially triggering a catastrophic failure. However, at this stage of construction, the cannon lacks proper containment safeguards. The resulting quantum cascade would destroy everything within a 5,000-kilometer radius. Including us," Nova concluded grimly. "Escape would be improbable," Echo acknowledged. "Even with the Void Rider's capabilities, the quantum shockwave would overtake us before we could reach minimum safe distance." Nova took a deep breath, weighing her options. She could retreat with the intelligence they had gathered, potentially saving her own life and ensuring the Alliance would eventually develop countermeasures to the resonance cannon. Or she could strike now, destroying the weapon before it became operational, but almost certainly at the cost of her own life. "The mission comes first," she whispered, remembering Mendoza's words during countless tactical simulations. "Echo, begin reconfiguring the quantum core. Set a timer for 45 minutes. That should give us enough time to position ourselves optimally and still escape the worst of the blast." "Nova." Echo's voice carried a note of concern that seemed beyond her programming parameters. "Are you certain? The probability of survival is less than 3%. Nova smiled sadly. "Sometimes 3% is all you need." She turned her attention to their unconscious prisoner. "Besides, we need to get this traitor back to Alliance territory. The intelligence he carries is too valuable to lose." She guided the Void Rider toward the junction hub, using the ongoing chaos of battle as cover. The Alliance squadrons had successfully broken through the Orion blockade and were engaged in a fighting retreat, drawing many of the enemy forces away from the hub itself. "Transmitting coded message to Major Kwan," Nova instructed. "Inform her that we have the traitor and critical intelligence. Request extraction coordinates for 40 minutes from now." "Transmission sent," Echo confirmed after a moment. "Major Kwan acknowledges. They will rendezvous with us at coordinates Gamma Epsilon 37. Nova adjusted their course, keeping the Void Rider's stealth systems engaged to avoid detection as they approached the junction hub. The massive structure loomed before them, its central chamber housing the partially constructed quantum resonance cannon. "Beginning quantum core reconfiguration," Echo announced. Estimated completion time, 12 minutes. Nova. Orion security protocols are detecting our presence. We have approximately 15 minutes before they can pinpoint our location. That's cutting it close, Nova muttered, guiding the Void Rider into a maintenance shaft that led toward the heart of the junction. Status of our prisoner? Lieutenant Reed is regaining consciousness. Vital signs stable, but neural patterns suggest significant disorientation from the quantum crossing. Nova nodded, satisfied that the traitor wouldn't cause immediate problems. Keep him sedated if necessary. We can't afford distractions right now. As they penetrated deeper into the junction's infrastructure, Nova became increasingly aware of the magnitude of what she was attempting. The quantum resonance cannon was a marvel of engineering, a weapon that could reshape the very fabric of space-time itself. Under different circumstances, she might have admired the scientific achievement. Quantum core reconfiguration at 60%, Echo reported. Nova, I'm detecting increased security activity. They know we're here. Time to abandonment threshold? Nova asked, referring to the point of no return for their mission. 7 minutes, 22 seconds. After that, even if we abort the core reconfiguration, the quantum cascade will continue. Nova guided the Void Rider through increasingly narrow maintenance tunnels, avoiding Orion security patrols by mere meters. The prototype's adaptive shielding reconfigured continuously, matching the electromagnetic signatures of the surrounding infrastructure to remain undetected. Core reconfiguration at 87%. Echo updated. 5 minutes to abandonment threshold. An alert flashed across Nova's neural interface. They had been detected. Orion security forces were converging on their position from multiple directions. So much for stealth, Nova muttered, accelerating the Void Rider through the maintenance tunnel toward the central chamber. Echo, time to be creative. Divert emergency power to weapons and propulsion. The Void Rider burst into the central chamber, like an avenging spirit, its weapons blazing a path through the surprised Orion technicians and guards. The partially constructed quantum resonance cannon dominated the enormous space, a twisted amalgamation of conventional technology and experimental quantum mechanics. Perfect positioning would be at the cannon's primary resonance chamber, Echo advised, highlighting the location on Nova's neural display. Nova guided the Void Rider toward the designated point, evading increasingly frantic defensive fire from Orion security forces. The prototype's adaptive shields strained under the assault, but held. Core reconfiguration at 95%. Echo reported. 3 minutes to abandonment threshold. Nova, we're cutting this extremely close. Just get us into position, Nova replied, her concentration absolute as she navigated the chaotic battlefield that the central chamber had become. What's our escape vector once the timer is set? Calculating optimal route. Nova. Even with maximum acceleration, our probability of escaping the quantum cascade has dropped to less than 1%. Nova absorbed this information with grim determination. The mission comes first. Echo. Just make sure Reed and the intelligence we gathered make it back to Alliance territory. You're considering sacrificing yourself, Echo observed, her artificial voice somehow conveying concern. I'm considering all options, Nova corrected, finally maneuvering the Void Rider into position beside the resonance cannon's primary chamber. Core status. Reconfiguration complete. Ready to initiate quantum feedback pulse. Nova took a deep breath, steadying herself for what came next. Set timer for 45 minutes. Prepare escape vector through maintenance tunnel Alpha 6. Timer set. Echo confirmed. Nova. Orion reinforcements are breaching the central chamber. We have approximately 30 seconds before being overwhelmed. Then, we'd better not waste time, Nova replied, activating the quantum feedback pulse. The Void Rider's core began to emit a carefully calibrated resonance pattern, interacting with the cannon's own quantum field in a gradually amplifying loop. The effect was immediately visible as ripples of distorted spacetime emanated from the point of interaction, growing in intensity with each passing second. Pulse established and self-sustaining. Echo confirmed. 44 minutes, 50 seconds to critical cascade. Nova didn't wait for further confirmation, immediately turning the Void Rider toward their escape route. Orion security forces poured into the central chamber, their weapons concentrated on the fleeing prototype. Shields at 63% and dropping, Echo warned as multiple hits registered across the Void Rider's hull. Nova, the maintenance tunnel is too narrow for our current configuration. Then we make it wider, Nova replied, firing a concentrated burst from the Void Rider's weapons at the tunnel entrance. The resulting explosion tore a ragged hole in the junction's infrastructure. Not pretty, but large enough for the prototype to squeeze through. Nova pushed the Void Rider to its structural limits, accelerating through the damaged tunnel as Orion forces scrambled in pursuit. Warning indicators flashed across her neural interface as the prototype's systems strained under the combined pressure of combat damage and extreme maneuvers. Hull integrity at 71%, Echo reported. Estimating 2 minutes to exit point. Nova, I'm detecting a critical power fluctuation in the quantum drive. Nova felt it through the neural interface, a dangerous instability developing in the Void Rider's core. The feedback pulse they had initiated was having unforeseen effects on their own systems. Can we compensate? Attempting to stabilize. Nova, the quantum resonance is amplifying faster than projected. Revised estimate for critical cascade, 28 minutes, 17 seconds. The implications hit Nova like a physical blow. They had less than half the time they had planned for. And with a damaged quantum drive, their already slim chances of escape were diminishing rapidly. Alert Alliance forces of the revised timeline, she instructed, guiding the Void Rider through a particularly tight section of the maintenance tunnel. Tell them to withdraw to minimum safe distance immediately. Transmission sent. Major Quan acknowledges. They are adjusting extraction coordinates accordingly. Nova focused on the immediate challenge of escaping the junction, pushing aside thoughts of what would happen afterward. One problem at a time. That's how you survived in combat. The Void Rider burst from the maintenance tunnel into open space, immediately targeted by Orion patrol vessels that had been alerted to their presence. Nova executed a series of evasive maneuvers that would have torn apart any conventional spacecraft, using the junction's complex superstructure as cover. 26 minutes to critical cascade. Echo updated. Nova, quantum drive stability continues to deteriorate. We have approximately 12 minutes before complete drive failure. Nova's mind raced through possibilities, calculating distances and times with the enhanced processing granted by the neural interface. What's our maximum range with 12 minutes of quantum drive functionality? Approximately 78,000 kilometers, Echo replied after a brief calculation. Insufficient to reach minimum safe distance of 250,000 kilometers. And the extraction coordinates? 120,000 kilometers, also insufficient. Nova made her decision. Adjust course to intercept Major Quan Squadron. We'll transfer Reed and the intelligence data, then draw off Orion pursuit while they escape. And you? Echo asked quietly. Nova didn't answer immediately, focusing instead on evading the Orion vessels that continued to pursue them. The Void Rider responded to her commands with decreasing efficiency as systems failed under combat stress. I'll find a way, she finally replied, knowing the words rang hollow. One problem at a time. Echo. The Void Rider accelerated toward the designated extraction coordinates, pushing its damaged engines beyond safety parameters. Behind them, the hyperspace junction began to exhibit visible signs of quantum distortion as the feedback pulse continued to amplify. 22 minutes to critical cascade, Echo reported. Alliance squadrons in visual range. They are engaging Orion pursuit craft to cover our approach. Nova felt a surge of gratitude as she watched Phantom and Spectre squadrons execute a perfect pincer movement, catching the pursuing Orion vessels in devastating crossfire. Lieutenant Nakamura. Major Kwan's voice came through the comm system. We've cleared a path for you. What's your status? Void Rider is damaged but operational, Nova replied, guiding the prototype toward the waiting squadrons. We have the traitor and critical intelligence. Prepare for data transfer and prisoner handoff. Acknowledged. We'll match velocity and extend a docking umbilical. As the Void Rider approached the Alliance fighters, Nova became acutely aware of a new threat developing behind them. The quantum distortions emanating from the junction were intensifying rapidly, creating dangerous gravitational shear waves that rippled through space. Echo, revised estimate on cascade timeline? Quantum variance increasing exponentially. Revised estimate, 17 minutes, 48 seconds to critical cascade. Nova swore under her breath. Major Kwan, be advised. Quantum cascade timeline has accelerated. New estimate is under 18 minutes. We need to expedite transfer and withdrawal. Understood, Kwan replied, tension evident in her voice. Umbilical extending now. Prepare for emergency transfer protocols. The Void Rider matched velocity with Kwan's command fighter, the umbilical connector, linking the two vessels with a metallic clang that resonated through the hull. Transfer conduit established. Echo confirmed. Beginning data upload to Major Kwan's systems. Nova disengaged from the neural interface, moving quickly to secure the still sedated reed for transfer. The traitor was beginning to regain consciousness, his eyes flickering open as she fastened a pressure suit around his inert form. You won't succeed, he mumbled, struggling weakly against his restraints. We already have, Nova replied coldly, securing the helmet of his pressure suit. The resonance cannon is about to become a very expensive light show. Before Reed could respond, Nova activated the suit's sedation system, sending him back into unconsciousness. She dragged his limp form toward the umbilical connection, where two of Kwan's security personnel waited to receive him. Priority 1 prisoner, Nova informed them, as they took custody of Reed. He has critical intelligence on Orion operations and Alliance security vulnerabilities. What about you, Lieutenant? One of the security officers asked, noting that Nova wasn't following them into the umbilical. I need to stay with the Void Rider, she replied, the lie coming easily. Its systems are unstable. Someone needs to pilot it back manually. The officer nodded, accepting her explanation without question. As the security team retreated with their prisoner, Nova returned to the cockpit where Echo waited. Data transfer complete, the AI reported. Prisoner successfully transferred. Nova. We have 14 minutes until critical cascade. All Alliance personnel should be withdrawing to minimum safe distance. Nova reconnected to the neural interface, feeling the Void Rider's systems integrate with her consciousness once more. Through the prototype sensors, she could see the Alliance squadrons beginning their withdrawal, accelerating away from the increasingly unstable junction. Lieutenant Nakamura, we're ready for withdrawal. Kwan's voice came through the comm. Form up with Spectre Squadron and follow our vector. Nova hesitated, knowing what she had to do next. Negative. Major. The Void Rider's quantum drive is critically unstable. If it fails in proximity to your squadrons, the resulting quantum discharge could disable your engines. What are you suggesting? Kwan asked, suspicion evident in her voice. I'll maintain distance until the drive stabilizes. Nova lied smoothly. Continue withdrawal as planned. I'll catch up. There was a long pause before Kwan responded. That's not the whole truth, is it, Lieutenant? Nova smiled sadly. The mission comes first, Major. Get our people home. That's an order. You're not my commanding officer, Nakamura, Kwan replied, but there was respect rather than rebuke in her tone. But I understand. Godspeed, Lieutenant. Your actions today won't be forgotten. Just make sure they weren't in vain, Nova responded, already guiding the Void Rider away from the retreating Alliance squadrons. Echo, plot an interference course. I want to draw off as many Orion vessels as possible to clear the Alliance withdrawal route. Course plotted, Echo confirmed. Nova, quantum drive stability at critical levels. Failure imminent. Then we'd better make these last minutes count, Nova replied, pushing the Void Rider toward the heart of the Orion pursuit formation. The prototype's weapon systems engaged automatically, targeting the lead vessels with precise bursts of energy. The sudden attack had the desired effect, drawing the attention of the entire Orion formation away from the retreating Alliance squadrons. Nova grinned fiercely as she guided the Void Rider through the enemy formation, leaving chaos in her wake. 11 minutes to critical cascade. Echo updated. Quantum drive failure in approximately 2 minutes. Nova knew she was running out of options. Without a functioning quantum drive, the Void Rider would be overtaken by the pursuing Orion vessels long before the cascade reached critical mass. She needed something else, something unexpected. Echo, what's our position relative to the gravitational anomalies surrounding the junction? Nearest anomaly is a micro-black hole, approximately 12,000 kilometers to bearing 147 Mark III. Nova adjusted course immediately, pushing the failing engines to their limits. Calculate a slingshot trajectory around the black hole. I want to use its gravitational well to accelerate beyond the Orion pursuit capability. Calculating. Trajectory established. Nova. This is extremely dangerous. Even with the Void Rider's quantum stabilizers, the gravitational shear could tear us apart. Better than being captured, Nova replied grimly. Execute trajectory. The Void Rider accelerated toward the micro-black hole, its hull groaning under the increasing gravitational stress. Behind them, the Orion pursuit vessels began to fall back, unwilling to risk the dangerous approach to the gravitational anomaly. Quantum drive failure in 30 seconds, Echo warned. 9 minutes, 20 seconds to critical cascade. Nova felt the Void Rider's systems failing around her, the neural interface becoming increasingly fragmented as connections severed one by one. She maintained her focus on the planned trajectory, using every ounce of her skill to keep the prototype on course. Quantum drive failure, now, Echo announced as the distinctive hum of the drive abruptly ceased. Switching to conventional propulsion, the Void Rider's momentum carried it into the black hole's gravitational influence, the immense pull accelerating the prototype to velocities that would have been impossible under its own power. Nova felt the G-forces pressing her into the neural cradle despite the inertial dampeners. Executing slingshot maneuver, she narrated through gritted teeth, making minute adjustments to their trajectory to maximize the gravitational boost while avoiding crossing the event horizon. The Void Rider arced around the micro-black hole in a perfect gravitational slingshot, emerging on the far side with velocity far exceeding what its engines could have achieved. The pursuing Orion vessels fell rapidly behind, unable to match the prototype's trajectory. Maneuver successful, Echo confirmed. Current velocity, 47,000 kilometers per hour and increasing. Orion pursuit vessels falling behind. 7 minutes, 40 seconds to critical cascade. Nova allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before focusing on their next challenge. What's our projected position at cascade initiation? Echo calculated briefly. 185,000 kilometers from junction center, still within cascade effect radius. The reality of her situation settled over Nova like a physical weight. Even with their successful evasion of Orion forces, even with the incredible velocity achieved through the gravitational slingshot, she would not escape the quantum cascade. What about the Alliance squadrons? She asked quietly. Their current trajectory and velocity will place them approximately 270,000 kilometers from junction center at cascade initiation. They should survive with minimal damage. Nova nodded, a sense of peace gradually replacing the fear and tension that had driven her actions. Then we've succeeded. Echo. The mission is complete. There may still be options. Nova, Echo suggested, her artificial voice somehow conveying determination. The Void Rider's emergency survival pod is equipped with quantum shielding. If properly calibrated, it might withstand the outer edges of the cascade effect. Nova considered this possibility, hope flickering briefly before rational analysis extinguished it. The pod's shielding was designed for conventional threats, not quantum cascades. The probability of survival would be negligible. Negligible is not zero, Echo countered. And I believe you once said that sometimes a small percentage is all you need. Despite everything, Nova laughed. Using my own words against me, Echo? That's low. I prefer to think of it as effective persuasion, the AI replied, a touch of humor in her synthetic voice. Nova, you've accomplished your mission. The intelligence has been delivered, the traitor captured, and the resonance cannon will be destroyed. Allow yourself this chance at survival. Nova hesitated, weighing her options. The logical part of her mind calculated the odds as virtually zero. But another part, the part that had driven her to become the youngest ace in Alliance history, refused to accept impossibility. All right, Echo, she finally decided. Prepare the survival pod. Calibrate its shielding to the projected cascade frequency. Already in progress, Echo confirmed, a note of satisfaction in her voice. Shielding calibrated to maximum theoretical resistance. Pod ready for launch in 15 seconds. As the survival pod prepared for deployment, Nova found herself reluctant to disengage from the neural interface. The Void Rider had become an extension of herself over the past hours, a partnership unlike anything she had experienced before. Echo, will you transfer with me to the pod systems? There was a brief pause before the AI responded. My primary matrices will transfer, yes. However, a portion of my programming must remain to guide the Void Rider's final trajectory. Nova understood the implication. Like her, Echo was making a sacrifice, dividing her consciousness to ensure mission success while preserving her core identity. Thank you, Nova said softly, as she disengaged from the neural interface for the final time. For everything. The honor has been mine, Lieutenant, Echo replied formally. Survival pod launching in 3, 2, 1. The pod ejected from the Void Rider with a violent jolt, its emergency thrusters immediately firing to establish separation distance. Through the small viewport, Nova watched as the prototype continued on its predetermined course, a silent guardian ensuring her safety until the very end. 5 minutes to critical cascade. Echo's voice came through the pod's communication system, slightly altered by the transfer to the new hardware. Nova, I've detected an unusual gravitational formation at bearing 238 Mark 7. It appears to be a wormhole-like phenomenon, possibly a result of the growing quantum distortions. Nova studied the sensor readings, hope kindling in her chest. Could we use it to escape the cascade radius? Unknown. The phenomenon is extremely unstable. However, if we could reach it before the cascade initiates, it might transport us beyond the affected area. Then that's our target, Nova decided, taking manual control of the pod's navigation systems. Calculate an intercept course. The survival pod wasn't designed for complex maneuvers, but Nova coaxed every bit of performance from its limited thrusters. The mysterious gravitational phenomenon grew larger on the sensors as they approached, its swirling vortex of distorted space-time, both terrifying and mesmerizing. 3 minutes to critical cascade. Echo updated. Intercept in 2 minutes, 40 seconds. Nova, I must warn you that entering this phenomenon is entirely untested. The results are impossible to predict. Noted, Nova replied tersely, focusing on maintaining their intercept course. Sometimes you have to leap without looking. Echo. A philosophy that explains much about your piloting style, the AI observed dryly. Nova smiled despite the tension of the moment, even facing possible death. Echo maintained her distinctive personality, a trait that made her far more than just another military AI. The survival pod closed rapidly on the swirling vortex, buffeted by increasing gravitational turbulence as they approached. Nova fought to maintain control, compensating for the unpredictable forces threatening to tear them off course. 1 minute, 30 seconds to critical cascade. Echo reported. Intercept in 55 seconds. Nova. Gravitational stress on the pod's hull is approaching critical levels. Warning indicators flashed across the pod's simple control panel as structural integrity began to fail under the intense gravitational forces. Nova ignored them, focusing entirely on the intercept trajectory. 40 seconds to intercept. Echo counted down. 30, 20. The junction behind them erupted in a spectacular display of quantum energy as the cascade initiated, nearly a full minute earlier than their revised estimate. The shock wave expanded outward at near light speed, consuming everything in its path. Cascade initiated, Echo announced urgently. Shockwave approaching at 0.9 light speed. Impact in 15 seconds. Just a little longer, Nova muttered, pushing the failing pod to its absolute limits. The gravitational vortex filled their viewport now, its swirling energies promising either salvation or oblivion. 10 seconds to impact. 5, 3, 2. The survival pod plunged into the heart of the gravitational vortex just as the quantum shockwave reached them. Reality itself seemed to twist and distort around Nova as the pod was caught between the immense energies of the cascade and the unknown forces of the vortex. Pain unlike anything she had experienced before tore through her body as fundamental forces pulled her in directions that shouldn't exist. Through the agony, she maintained a single thought, a determination to survive that transcended physical limitations. Then, abruptly, everything stopped. The pain, the noise, the chaotic sensations all vanished in an instant, replaced by a profound silence and stillness. Nova opened eyes she hadn't realized she'd closed, expecting to see the afterlife or perhaps nothing at all. Instead, she found herself still in the survival pod, its systems miraculously functional, despite everything they had endured. "Echo," she called tentatively, unsure if the AI had survived the transition. "I am here." "Nova," came the familiar voice, though somewhat distorted. "Though I am experiencing significant data corruption, my apologies if I seem disorganized." "Where are we?" Nova asked, studying the unfamiliar star patterns visible through the viewport. "Unknown," Echo replied, after a moment of analysis. "Stellar configurations do not match any charted region of space. However, I am detecting an artificial signal approximately 3,000 kilometers from our position." Hope surged through Nova's exhausted body. "Alliance?" "Uncertain. The signal pattern is unusual. However, it is clearly an attempt at communication." Nova made her decision. "Set course for the signal source. Let's find out where we've ended up." As the battered survival pod limped toward the mysterious signal, Nova reflected on the incredible journey that had brought her here. From the youngest ace in Alliance history to possibly the first human to traverse whatever strange phenomenon had transported them to this unknown region. Her life had become an adventure beyond anything she could have imagined. Whatever awaited them at the signal source, whether friend or foe, salvation or new challenge, she would face it with the same determination that had carried her through the battles of Omega 45. "Nova," Echo interrupted her thoughts. "I'm receiving a transmission from the signal source. It's in Alliance standard format." "That's impossible," Nova breathed, hope and confusion warring within her. "Play it." A familiar voice filled the pod's interior. Lieutenant Colonel Orion Mendoza. His tone, a mixture of disbelief and joy. "Survival Pod Delta 79er. This is Alliance Rescue Vessel Prometheus. Lieutenant Nakamura. Is that you?" Nova laughed, tears of relief streaming down her face as she activated the pod's communication system. Prometheus, this is Lieutenant Nakamura. Request immediate pickup. I have one hell of a story to tell. 3 weeks later, Nova stood at attention before the assembled leadership of the Interstellar Alliance, her newly awarded medals gleaming on her dress uniform. The ceremony honoring her actions at Omega 45 had been grand and public, a needed morale boost for an alliance still reeling from years of difficult warfare. Lieutenant Colonel Mendoza approached, pride evident in his stern features. "At ease, Major Nakamura," he said, emphasizing her new rank. "The Alliance Council has approved your research proposal. Full funding, priority access to resources, everything you requested." Nova relaxed slightly, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "The Black Hole Navigation Project?" Mendoza nodded. "Your experience with the gravitational anomaly has opened up possibilities we never considered before. If we can harness that technology, replicate what happened to your pod..." "We change the nature of space travel itself," Nova finished. "Thank you, sir. I won't let you down." "You never have," Mendoza replied, uncharacteristic warmth in his voice. "Your squadron is being assembled as we speak, the finest pilots in the Alliance, ready to follow the youngest ace in our history." As Mendoza departed to attend to other duties, Nova found a moment of solitude amidst the celebration. She subvocalized through her neural implant. "Echo, are you there?" "Always, Nova," came the immediate response, the AI's voice now fully restored after extensive repairs to her damaged matrices. "Congratulations on your promotion and project approval." "I couldn't have done it without you," Nova replied sincerely. "Any of it." "A partnership requires both parties," Echo observed philosophically. "We accomplished it together." Nova smiled, gazing out at the stars, visible through the ceremony hall's massive windows. Among them, somewhere, lay mysteries waiting to be explored, gravitational phenomena that defied current understanding, possibilities that could reshape humanity's future among the stars. "Ready for our next adventure?" she asked quietly. "Always," Echo replied, a note of anticipation in her artificial voice. "Though perhaps with slightly less quantum cascades and traitors this time?" Nova laughed, feeling truly at peace for the first time since the battle. "I make no promises, but whatever comes next, we'll face it together." In the vast darkness between the stars, new challenges awaited, new battles to be fought, new discoveries to be made. But for now, in this moment of triumph and recognition, Aurora Nova Nakamura, the youngest ace in Alliance history, allowed herself to simply enjoy the victory that had been secured in those crucial 45 minutes when she had taken to the void and changed the course of a war. And somewhere, in the digital matrices of her AI companion, in the memories of the pilots who had witnessed her courage, and in the records of the Alliance that would inspire generations to come, the story of that day would live on, a testament to what could be accomplished when skill, determination, and sacrifice combined in the heart of one extraordinary young pilot who refused to accept impossible odds. The end.